So the U.S. economy shrank this quarter. The GDP shrank 0.3%. Now, mind you, while our GDP shrank 0.3%, other European GDPs and other GDPs actually went up 0.1, 0.3. And while it's not gigantic, quarterly growth, it's growth, but we shrank. We shrank. Now, people could try to explain this away any way they want, but this is the effect of Donald Trump's tariffs. This is the effect of the complete confusion in its implementation. This is the effect of the lack of consumer confidence that the American public has in how it's going to affect the items they buy at the store. It has sapped investor confidence in any dream any investor had of like, well, maybe we can work with the system and we can invest here, invest there. While we're seeing some companies doing that, and I'm sure companies will, a lot are holding back because the Trump administration has not been particularly clear about how this goes. Is it, okay, we're going to have this sanction on forever, and so you have a bubble where we're going to have this tariff on forever where you're going to have a protective bubble for this section of your economy? Or, as he's also suggested, is it a negotiating tactic where he's going to reel it back? And so until we get through all these negotiations and until we have some clarity on what tariffs are going to stay and what tariffs are going to go, investors are holding back their money. In fact, a lot of companies had to hold back their reports because they're still trying to figure out exactly how to calculate it and what, the quarterly financial reports with everything going on. And this is not the only negative economic indicator. We have some others I wanted to point out. Of course, there is the problem of McDonald's reporting the largest same-store sales decline since 2020. So they're back to COVID numbers. The last boats without tariffs from China are arriving right now, meaning the shortages that people have talked about, the empty shelves that those who study logistics and supply chains and those who follow the cargo ships that they've been warning about, the clock has started. We're now waiting. We're now waiting for the shelves to empty. Of course, not all the shelves are going to empty. There's going to be the shelves that are largely originating in Chinese products. For example, toy stores, as we get closer to Christmas, probably going to be more difficult since we don't really have the domestic production at home to produce enough toys this Christmas to make up for all of the stuff that's going to be sold, that, all the stuff that, came from China, meaning toys are going to be more expensive. And this is actually something that Donald Trump reacted to, this specific fact, the fact that, China produces so much of the toy market in the United States. Anytime you walk into Toys R Us, Trump responded to this with a clip I wanted to show you guys, which I thought was very interesting. And I don't think is the type of thing you throw at the American public if their consumer confidence is low and you want to increase it. And when you have a consumerist model, economic model in the United States. Listen to what Donald Trump said about the type of toys children will get this year.
When will you speak to President Xi of China?
That'll happen. I mean, look, right now, and I told you before, they're having tremendous difficulty because their factories are not doing business.
Occurred is occurred.
They made $1 trillion.
Hey, thank you for the $5. Trump just signed an executive order to defund NPR and PBS. Well, that blows. Support NPR, support PBS. I guess that's the next segment after this one. Every day is a new bag of bricks.
Business. They made $1 trillion with Biden, $1 trillion, even $1.1 trillion with Biden selling us stuff. Much of it we don't need. Somebody said, oh, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But we're not talking about something that we have to go out of our way. They have ships that are loaded up with stuff, much of which, not all of it, but much of which we don't need. And we have to make a fair deal. We've been ripped off by every country in the world, but China, I would say, is the leading one. the leading candidate for the Chief Ripper offer.
The chief candidate for the Chief Ripper offer. The Chief Ripper offer. Now, let me just be clear about a few things. When he says China's made $1.1 trillion off of us, he's talking about them selling us products that Americans buy, right? The reason they made that money is because Americans bought those products. So you can like, oh, you know, Biden did this, Biden did that. No, the American people did. The American people and American companies were the ones that bought them. Don't place the blame on Biden. He didn't make the purchases. It was the people who made the purchases. Now, if you don't think it should be allowed to make those purchases, if you don't think the American people should be allowed to make those decisions, that's a different thing. But it was companies who bought those things for their warehouses to then sell those to Americans. So that's the first thing. The second thing, Donald Trump got elected off the economy. He got elected off the idea that he's a businessman. The American public didn't know Harris too well. They don't know how well she's going to handle the economy. They wanted to bring grocery prices down. They wanted to bring general prices across the board down. And there's like issues with housing, of course. They wanted more housing built and stuff, even though Trump has done very little to lift any fingers on that. The general idea is that Americans wanted to see the economy improve. That's why Donald Trump got elected. If it wasn't for that, he would not have won. The votes that ultimately decided the election was about 200,000 in the swing states. That sounds like a lot, but historically speaking, it really isn't. We're talking about a 1.1% difference in popular vote. 1.5% difference in popular vote. He won a plurality, not a majority. And so if the American people knew that what a tariff was isn't that the Chinese are going to pay for it, you're going to be paying more, because the way he talked about on campaign trail is we need to make China pay this, we need to make China pay that. And here he is now finally saying, well, maybe you'll buy less, you'll have to buy less things, and the things you will buy will be more expensive. Look, I believe a certain amount of American manufacturing should be brought back to the United States. I believe that having American manufacturing here, shorter supply lines, can be good. And I think having good paying manufacturing jobs in the United States can also be good. But that doesn't mean I think literally everything should be produced here. I don't think that'd be cost effective. I think that would make many items and common household things that we have in our everyday life a lot more expensive and a lot less accessible. And that is one thing Americans do like, is the accessibility of cheap entertainment things, whether they be video game consoles, toys, or whatever. And so if you decide that we're just going to make it all more expensive, and that's what you're going to tell the people honestly on the campaign trail, he wouldn't have won. He would have lost.
Trump XO renaming San Andreas fault. Joe Biden's fault. Satire.
Thank you for the $5. And thank you for putting satire in parentheses, because it's impossible to know these days. It is impossible to know these days. I think that having some manufacturing here is good. But let me tell you something. The strategy he's using right now of implementing a bunch of tariffs on a bunch of countries across the board, including on items that we can produce domestically, things that are grown out of the soil that we don't have the climate for, or are the machine parts that are needed for us to produce goods here. Like when we're talking about Ford, like 75% of Ford's like product of its truck, it's produced here. But 20 to 25% of it is imported when we talk about certain machine parts. And to place those tariffs on those cars, on those car parts, make those cars more expensive, means those companies make less money. And they have to think about, oh yeah, they want to expand in the United States, but they need profit to expand. They need some ability not only to, reinvest in themselves, but also, why would they be getting punished for importing just a few parts from overseas that they can't get here because it's literally not on the market? Maybe you can create a market for it. Maybe you can subsidize it if you really want it to be all made in the United States, but you haven't. Trump hasn't subsidized these machine parts. Trump hasn't subsidized these factories to be built. In fact, when we're talking about the CHIPS Act, this is something Trump was talking about reeling in, the subsidies that were bringing TSMC, Taiwanese semiconductors, to the United States to be built here. that we had Taiwanese manufacturers training American citizens on how to make semiconductor chips. Those subsidies, those are on the chopping block. So in a situation where you need to make this alteration to bring back manufacturing jobs to places like Dayton, Ohio, if you really want to pull this off, you have to create a cushion for these companies. And not only do you have to create a cushion for these companies so the cost isn't borne by the citizenry, but definitely, since, again, that's the reason they elected you. You essentially lied to them by telling them that you were going to bring prices down on day one. You also need to clear up the confusion. It cannot be, well, I would invest in an American company, but I don't know if the sanction's going to stay. I don't know if the sanction's going to be removed tomorrow, so I'm not going to invest. And we can't have consumer confidence so low. Now, look, it's not like every single economic indicator for Donald Trump is bad. Inflation is not getting out of control, even though of all the predictions of, tariffs are inflationary. And while they can be inflationary, it doesn't seem like they've sent America into any inflationary spiral, which is good. Mortgages are not skyrocketing right now, which is good. These are two positive economic indicators for Donald Trump. So it's not like everything is complete garbage. Energy prices are not out of control. They're pretty low. But when you tell the American people or investors that, okay, maybe it'll be a bubble, maybe there won't be a bubble, all you've done is create uncertainty, and they're going to sit on their hands and they're going to wait because they are not going to roll the dice on their bottom dollar. They're just not. They're just not going to do it. But don't worry, guys. If the economy's shrinking, if the losses to companies like General Motors, the exact companies he wants to expand production here, losing $5 billion due to the tariffs, $5 billion that could have been reinvested in the United States, money that could have been used to help, lead the way on this pathway to rebuild American industry. All this shrinkage, all of this has an explanation, guys. All this has an explanation. Donald Trump has an explanation. Here it is. This is what he tweeted out. Sorry, truthed out. How Orwellian is that? Truthed out from over 2 days ago. This is Biden's stock market, not Trump's. I didn't take over until January 20th. Tariffs will soon start kicking in, and companies are starting to move into the USA in record numbers. Our country will boom, but we have to get rid of the Biden overhang. This will take a while. Has nothing to do with tariffs. Only that he left us with bad numbers. Sir, we're taking fatal readings of bad numbers. What is bad? I prefer the good numbers like 3, not the bad numbers like 9. Bad numbers on what bad numbers? The stock markets were increasing when he passed it over to you. GDP was increasing. His last quarterly report had a GDP increase. It had job growth. Your first quarterly report, our economy shrinking. Only that he left us with bad numbers, but when the boom begins, it will be like no other. Be patient. Be patient. Now, there's 2 things I want to say about this. The first thing is, this is Biden's stock market confuses me, because among the positive economic indicators right now for Trump, the stock market's actually up again. Now, that doesn't mean we're avoiding a recession. That doesn't mean that a recession is impossible. That doesn't mean it is not like a perfect prediction for the economy, because GDP shrink, low consumer confidence, low investor confidence. These are all bad economic indicators. But I mean, the stock market actually isn't crashing right now. So when he says this is Biden's stock market, I'm a little confused. He could say this is Biden's economy. I guess would make more sense, but instead he said this is Biden's stock market. Whatever. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this is an interesting tone that on April 30th, 2025 at 9:13 a.m. right in the morning, he's saying that this economy, this stock market is Joe Biden's. Let me show you a message from January 29th, 2024. So this is before he was inaugurated, but is on the campaign trail. This is the Trump stock market. Because my polls against Biden are so good that investors are projecting that I will win. and that will drive the market up. Everything else is terrible. Watch the Middle East. And record-setting inflation has already taken its toll. Make America great again. It's Trump's stock market when it's good. It's Biden's stock market when it's bad. And when it's in the middle, take your pick. Take your pick. And you want to know what's going to happen if the stock market numbers continue to go up? It's going to go back to being Trump's again. It was Trump's stock market, then it was Biden's stock market, and now it's going to be Trump's stock market again, right when it turns around. Everything good that happens while it's under the umbrella of the United States is due to Donald Trump. Everything bad, I don't know, Biden, Hillary, Obama. Here is another explanation about the GDP from the White House press secretary, deputy press secretary, where, again, they're running with this is the Bidenomics.
Matters of the economy. It was reported this morning there was a slight shrinking in the GDP. What's the response of the White House to that?
Well, look, if you break it down, there is an outsized influence of January in that report. Remember, this president wasn't elected until January 20th. The GDP is a backward-looking indicator, but all the other indicators that we do have from that report and others show that there is a really positive trend for this president's new golden age that he is unleashing. Investment is up 22%. That is a testament to all of these conversations he's having with 130 countries all around the world trying to make better trade deals with this president, because companies know the way that you'll face no tariffs 100% is by manufacturing here in America. So we are seeing those investments roll in. We are seeing private sector job growth increase. We are seeing retail shopping increase. All of the signs trend that the new golden age is underway thanks to this president's economic leadership.
Now, to be clear, retail sales increasing could be a good thing for the president of the United States. I did not list that as a positive economic indicator because the areas that are seeing the largest increase in sales are areas like the auto industry, which just so happen to be the subject of much of Trump's ire when it comes to tariffs, even though now they're negotiating with them to see if they can, just have a flat 25% instead of compounding tariffs, and they're working on executive orders around that, whatever. But the reason people went out to buy those cars is because they made the assumption that it's going to be more difficult and more expensive to buy those cars, so it's better to buy it now. That's why the market's also seeing the stock of O'Reilly's Auto Parts shoot through the roof, because the market is making the bet that people are going to go repair their car instead of go buy a new one. So I don't think the immediate increase in sales could necessarily be a sign of, it doesn't mean it's necessarily a sign of economic prosperity. It could be a sign of what some would call panic buying. The plurality percentage of Americans, when asked about how they feel about the economy, answer afraid. Afraid. 37%. I'll tell you, the next one was also not good. It goes well over like 57 to 60%, over 60%, having negative feelings about our current economy. But 37% afraid. When you're afraid, that's when you panic buy. So I don't think that's necessarily a positive economic indicator. But the main thing I wanted to talk about here is this president wasn't elected to January 20th, so this quarterly report doesn't matter. So the image that they want to throw at you and me is that between January 1st and January 20th, Joe Biden did so much damage that the 3 months that come after that was not enough to dig them out of the negative, including the rest of the month of January, was not enough to dig the president out of the negative when it comes to GDP shrinkage. And it has nothing to do with tariffs, even though when you ask Americans about the consumer confidence, they name it, man. They name it. By the way, if you look at, and this is something that I understand that most Americans won't do, and I think that's what the deputy press secretary is counting on. If you look at Joe Biden's last quarterly rating, GDP was going up, employment, we were getting jobs. Inflation was not skyrocketing any more than it was before. Whatever metric you want to use, but let's just concentrate on GDP. GDP went up under Biden's last quarter. So am I supposed to believe that in Biden's last quarter, they decided in the last 20 days to just throw it all away? No, This is an administration that cannot accept its failures, and so it's running through the old playbook out of reliability, out of fear, out of comfort. It's become a comfort for them to just say, Biden. That's his answer for the economy. It's Biden's fault, it's Biden's fault, it's Biden's fault, even though he claims the economy when the stocks are up, even when it's not, even when he's not in office. And when it gets to the war, it's Biden's war, it's Biden's war, it's Biden's war, to explain away the fact that he said he would end it before he got inaugurated while he was still president-elect. Then he said he would end it in 24 hours, consistently over and over and over again. That's what most Americans are familiar with and remember. And then he said within 100 days, and now we've just passed the 100-day mark, the third goalpost being knocked down. If it's good, it's Trump's. If it's bad, it's everyone else's. Little Marco ain't no little no more. He's now Secretary of State and National Security Advisor.